I'd like to call this October 9th, 2024 Board of Education work session to order. Mr. Anagnostou, would you take the roll?
Mrs. Bissell?
Here.
Mrs. Cobain?
Here.
Mr. Micko?
Here.
Ms. Stavcek?
Here.
Mrs. Hausum?
Here.
We are all present. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We remind ourselves of our strategic priorities at the beginning of every meeting. Our district has developed and is currently engaged in a 3-year strategic plan which reflects the values, beliefs, and hopes of our students, staff, parents, and community. One of those priorities is transforming teaching and learning, and I think as we review our report card today, that will be the key priority that we'll discuss today. Next on our agenda is recognitions. Do we have a OSBA student achievement recognition?
Yes, we do.
Mrs. Cobain, Ms. Stavcek.
Haley and I did the high school this time, and right now I'll bring up Mr. Bill Winkler, and he can tell you, he nominated 4 people from PBIS, restorative, what do you call that, Bill? Restorative something, and restorative what? I'm asking. How about I just explain? Okay, there you go. Good job.
You're on the, it's restorative practices, but what it is, our PBIS program at the high school is going very well. They just got the Bronze Award this year, which is the highest they can achieve, 2nd year in a row. Major referrals in the building even reduced by 25% 3 years in a row. It's outstanding stuff. So there's a group of teachers in our building that they want to go to the next level. And Eric Castle and Drew Kosmigas are the PBIS guys. They do all the really hard work. They're actually at a PBIS training right now in Chicago. They can't be here tonight. So this group of teachers, and I'm gonna call them up in a second, they came to us. They initiated, they have ownership agency for the building and said, we want to do more than just give positive rewards. We want to do more than just talk about discipline, because they are also part of a discipline subcommittee that helps guide what discipline looks like. We want to work with teachers to discuss how to be restorative. And what that means is when something happens with a student who gets a consequence for something they're not doing or something they did, it's not just about punishment. Certainly consequences are important, and I believe that thoroughly. However, these guys, they got up and spoke in front of our teachers at a staff meeting and explained the value of talking to students, working through what's going on with them personally, what's the rest of the story, how their actions affected the teacher, how they affected the class. It sounds simplistic, but oftentimes in education we don't have time in the day to do these things. So I'm going to call them up one at a time. Brian Edmonds, Ken Davenport, Kelly Rose, and Tara Brusky.
Okay. Oh man, I was on the spot.
No pressure.
No pressure. Yeah, so when we came up with this stuff, we see the value. Brian and I come from an alternative school setting where that's where we lived, and that was how we operated with some of the probably the toughest students in the Cleveland area. And Kelly got on board, and Tara got on board, and so we see the value in not just, because if you just punish kids, that's not going to change behavior. So behavior changes with a combination of getting a consequence, but then when they bounce back to you, you have to coach them up, reteach them, and show them a better way. And so the restorative practice is the way to do that. And I say this line a lot, like people say we don't have time for that stuff, we don't have time not to, because and it shows the numbers are showing that major referrals are down. Our most challenging students are performing better in classes, and they're doing a much better job staying out of trouble and being in the classroom, which is where they should be. So I think we're off to a good start, and it's going to keep getting better.
So I do want to add, you guys are going to talk about the school report card later, and I think that's important, and I'm not going to steal any of these ladies' thunder. But one of the things I'm the most proud of at the high school is that I'm a bit of a numbers nerd, and every summer I break down the scores of our special education students in co-taught classes, and we are always within 5 to 7% in school performance for our inclusion kids as we are for all kids. So when you see the data jump the last 3 years at the high school, I would like to say one of the biggest reasons that has happened is that our lowest achieving kids, the gap between them and the rest of their class has closed significantly. It is rare. I was a special ed teacher myself, and these two gentlemen both come from that background as well. It is really rare that you can get kids with disabilities to perform that close to the norm. That's a big reason why our growth data is so good at the high school, is that these guys, that's the type of thing when you talk to a kid and find out the rest of their story, they then bounce back. When Ken said bounce back, that's a great word. They bounce back and give 100% more versus a kid who gets a consequence and then just kind of checks out, because that does happen. So I just want to articulate that's the importance of this restorative stuff, is what these guys do. You two, can we get a picture? You guys jump in.
You were in the picture. You should be in the picture too. Thanks. You shake everyone's hand.
For the inside circle. Good job, thank you. Great, thank you, thank you. Good job, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Good job.
All right, let's see you guys.
So we'll just roll right into our student award. Christian, coming up here. So this month is Christian Zarifi. Christian is a senior at the high school. When we talk about kids getting engaged, Christian takes it to the next level. He is a member of the National Honor Society. He is the president of the student council. He is a starter on the football team. He is an active member of my principal's leadership group. When I say active, the reason I say that is because he takes it above. We have probably 250 kids total, but Christian is the one that organized the lunch with the elementary kids. That's right. He does. The work on the parade was really Christian and two other young ladies along with Mrs. Drake. Just one of those guys. I talked about this last year with another student. If there's an opportunity, Christian signs up for it. He does everything. He represents, really, honestly, he represents what it is to be a Mustang. He lives the school pride. He behaves. He's a model for other students and just really a leader in the building. Did I leave anything out that you do? I asked him before. I said, give me the list. I'm really good at remembering what people tell me, but it was a long list. I get it all? All right, I think we got it. But no, Christian's left his mark on the high school. And I always say this about the leadership group. If they leave, when the kids leave as seniors with the leadership, if they leave something behind that other kids can experience, and Christian's legacy, I think as much as anything else, is going to be that parade, which was extremely well done and organized, and that will continue for many years, and he's going to get a lot of credit for that. Do you want to say anything? No, you're good. Your whole family come up and get a picture. These guys are here all night. Take it away.
Aw.
Ready?
Now, Mr. Ringo with the band.
All right.
I bet that's your proud grandma. Yes, I could just tell.
He didn't even question, he's like, yeah, I'll do it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I know.
Thank you so much for being so great.
Oh, please, pretty.
Congratulations again. Congratulations again.
So on the behalf of the school board, I just want to thank both the teachers and the students and the family that spent some time with us. It's important that we recognize everyone. The line that I'm going to steal, I will try to remember to give credit for, but we don't have time not to. And I think that is really significant and describes a lot of the things that we put our energy into, because we know that if we put the time into it, it will pay dividends. And it was really nice to have everyone here today. Next is some donations. Dr. Ryba.
Yeah, so it's, we're very excited to have we always have great partners in the community. But the Strongsville Community Theater has been a group we've been talking to for a little bit. So I'd like to ask Marcia and the Strongsville Community Theater team to come up and share some great news.
Thank you for giving us a couple of minutes to promote our theater, and I know there are several of you here who I assume have been to some of our productions over the years, and if you haven't, then you're in for a real treat to attend some of our performances. The first one coming up is the one that is our benefit show, and I just want to take a moment that I'd really like to promote this. This is our 4th year to have a special program with, it just so happens, my husband's Little Big Band, and Jim Wanacott did happen to teach in this school system for many years. And we have 8 wonderful singers. And it is called a tribute show because it is to support scholarships. And we have given approximately $35,000 to Strongsville High School seniors the past 4 years. And these go to seniors who are pursuing the performing arts at the university level. And we perform these particular benefit shows usually at the senior center in Strongsville because it is an evening of entertainment, hors d'oeuvres, J. Bella usually, and cash bar. Yes, we do have that there. But you do get a wonderful show. I have a few of these. I'm just going to leave them here for anyone who might want to look at that. And the show is being held the end of October, Friday the 25th, Saturday the 26th. Evening show, 6 o'clock, and et cetera, et cetera. But the money, the proceeds, go toward these scholarships. Now, we're here specifically to present a check, and this is to go to the Strongsville City Schools, but particularly to be directed to the middle school drama program, which is now going to be in effect. We just can't thank you enough, Dr. Ryba, all of you, for allowing this program to start. And I do want to mention Liz Jones, because she is a special lady who is our theater manager, and she has been very instrumental in getting this started this year. And we knew that funds were needed. Frankly, you need financial backing sometimes to start these programs. And so I have our vice president, Charlotte, here with her special. I have the real one here, which I would like to present to you, Dr. Ryba, and I just want to thank you for allowing us to start this program. We know that Jeremy Jenkins at the high school, what a fabulous job that man has done. And we've worked together with him some. And we kept saying, you know, we need to feed his program. So hopefully, this will feed his program, and eventually, maybe we can even do something at the elementary level in time to come. So I thank you. I thank you for this opportunity, and God bless.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I can't wait to see you try to cash that at the show.
Very proud of you. Dropped the real one. Very proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It is a good deal. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Did you guys all get in?
So Cameron, I hope you haven't deposited the check quite yet.
It's
It
not
is a-
through yet.
It is a little premature.
That's right.
Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that a donation in the amount of $10,000 be accepted from the Strongsville Community Theater in order to fund the formation of the Strongsville Middle School Drama Club and production of their musical. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Kilbane. Any discussion? I would like to say I forgot the date of the play. Does anyone remember the date of the play?
25th.
Friday the 25th and Saturday the 26th.
That is correct.
One more time?
Friday, October 25th, and Saturday, October 26th at 7 PM at the Rec Center.
Excellent. Any other discussion?
I would just like to say-
Besides-
Oh, I'm sorry, go on.
Besides, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I know my children, when they were at the middle school, there were plays, et cetera. I remember the name, Mrs. Folke. And they were wonderful. And I'm glad we are able to put a little bit of dollars and cents behind it and to take that as a start and help it to grow. And ultimately, these kinds of partnerships are what make our school special, so it's wonderful that they were able to do that and to continue to do that. $35,000 in college scholarships is nothing to sneeze at, so we give them our heartfelt thank you. Did you have anything else, Dr. Ryba? So hearing nothing else, if there is no other discussion, Mr. Anagnostou, please take the roll.
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes,
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
and the motion carries. Next on our agenda, Dr. Ryba?
We have another donation. Be it resolved upon my recommendation that the donation agreement between Strongsville City Schools and Premier Athletics be approved as listed in the exhibit. And this is an action item.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Kilbane. Any discussion? Cameron, can you give us a summary?
Sure. So Premier Athletics has indoor facilities targeting baseball and softball. So we've had a long-standing partnership that we've put into a contract for this year that basically states during the winter and early spring season, we can use their facilities at a discounted rate, which is a great partnership and a great support to our program, especially it being so local. And in exchange for that, Premier Baseball can use our softball and baseball fields in the summertime for their summer leagues at a discounted rate for us. So it's a mutually beneficial partnership that helps our kids, helps our community and other kids in terms of baseball and softball throughout the year.
And it's an annual agreement?
It's an annual agreement, so this is just for this upcoming year.
Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, please take the roll.
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes,
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
And Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
and the motion carries. Next on our agenda is public comment. I do not have any slips for public comment. Is anybody wanting to address the board? Hearing none, approval of minutes is part of our consent calendar, and on the consent calendar is the September 26th, 2024 work session minutes. Board of Education, other?
I think you're on one.
I'm out of,
It's back to me.
there you go. Next on our agenda is a really lengthy treasurer's report. Thanks, George. And that leads us into our superintendent's report. Dr. Ryba.
Yeah, so as we talked about earlier, it's the annual meeting to review our state report card results, so I will not steal any commentary on it. I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Elementary and then also Secondary Education, Aaron Green and Nicole Hackman, who will lead us through an overview to give you the successes and areas of focus moving forward.
All right, thank you and good evening. So as Dr. Ryba shared with you, every year the state releases district and building report cards. This is for the 23-24 school year, so it's a synopsis of last school year and how we as a district did. So Mr. Micco referenced this at the start of the meeting, but we have our strategic plan and we base everything that we do on working toward these goals. And so we're going to focus on transforming teaching and learning as well as aligning staff and resources. And hopefully you shall see how that aligns with our purpose and mission. We would be remiss to not talk about, while this is one data point and a very important one, we also grow kids in a lot of other ways. So you've heard a lot about the Model Mustang and how we build and empower students. Just a couple photos to remind us that, again, data is very important, but it doesn't encapsulate the whole picture. So here are a couple cute photo opportunities that we just put in there as proof that we are not growing kids only academically, but building Model Mustangs as well. So moving into the actual report card, for the first time in maybe forever, it's the same as last year with regards to how they're measuring. So this is the second year by the state of Ohio that they do an overall star rating. You can get a rating from a 1 through a 5, and it's in half-star increments. You'll see 5 rated components, and then there are some areas that are report only. So they give us data to look through, but it isn't necessarily graded, so to speak. As we talked about here, the overall rating on the bottom right-hand graphic there is made up of 6 measures. One of them is report only this year. So that's our college, career, workforce, military readiness. So we do have some data that Nicole will talk about there, but we have the other 5 measures. And just like in years past, achievement, this is how students are performing on state tests. So it's going to look at every student and where they performed. Progress is, are they making growth? So not only are we passing a test, but are we growing kids year to year? Those 2, achievement and progress, are the ones that are weighted the heaviest. So we really, we focus on all of the areas, but we really focus on those 2 because it's showing are we growing kids? Are we performing at higher levels than we have in the past? We'll also talk about the early literacy component, which looks at K through 3 reading and what we're doing programmatically. We have gap closing and also graduation rate. So moving into our report card, this is Strongsville's report card. Proudly, we can share that we earned 5 stars, significantly exceeding state standards. And that's the definition by the state of Ohio. If you look at the measures here, I highlighted the achievement and the progress because, again, those ones are weighted a little more heavily than the other 3. All of them important, though. You'll see 5 stars in achievement, progress, and gap closing, and then 4 stars in graduation and early literacy. And we'll go into a little more detail about each of these measures. We'll also talk about areas of strength that we have and areas of challenge that we will continue to address. Here's a graph. In the state of Ohio, 68 districts received 5 stars. And again, we're proud to say that we were one of those receiving 5 stars. That's out of 609 districts, I believe. This slide here talks about similar districts. So the state of Ohio puts out a list for any district of the 20 most similar districts to them. So that can be in things such as number of students that attend, the socioeconomic status of our students, talking about college graduates in the community. It looks at a multitude of factors and finds the 20 districts in the state that are most similar to us. So if you can see those, we have 20 listed. Of those 20, 7 of them earned 5 stars. So again, that's a pretty good measure for us that we're doing some good things. Here is the overall building report cards. So each of our buildings, with the exception of the preschool, because they don't have measures, enough measures to create a report card. Each building scores an overall holistic rating as well. And you can see all of our buildings scored either 4, 4.5, or 5 stars. And those metrics are exceeding or significantly exceeding standards. Again, there are some areas here that we need to grow and improve on, and we will talk about those and our plans to continue the progress that we're making. But again, a lot to celebrate here. Looking at the graph here, you can see where we fall with the 4, 4.5, and the 5-star buildings and the distribution in the state. Any questions before we dive into the first few measures? Okay, so the first measure here that we're going to talk about is achievement. And this is one in which we received 5 stars, significantly exceeding the state standards. You can see that this is where we talked about the performance index. So it's not just how many kids passed our test, and I say our test, but it's the state of Ohio. What it actually is at what level are our students performing? So at a proficient level, there's a weight. That's a 1.0 weight. That's where we, the bar where we try to get. However, can we grow our kids beyond that? Can we get them to the accomplished, the advanced plus levels, because those weigh heavier? So when we talk to our students and we talk to our teachers, it's not about just can we pass a test. We want to try each year to grow our students and build this performance index higher each year. We do have, last year we were at a 90.8%, so this is a slight increase in our performance index from last year. I'm going to turn progress over. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
As a parent, I was seeing the test results, and I've seen advanced, accomplished, proficient, basic, et cetera, on
Sure.
the results. I've never seen advanced plus. So what do you get to achieve an advanced plus?
So you have to be formally accelerated. So if you are a 6th grade student, but you've been formally accelerated either in a subject area or whole grade acceleration, you then, it's how you perform on the test, and then it bumps it up. It gives it a little more weight than if you received accomplished because you're taking a grade level test that was higher than your actual grade level, you're formally accelerated, it gives extra weight to that.
So if you're advanced a grade and then score advanced, you're an advanced plus.
Not just scoring advanced, but if you're advanced, is that correct?
You have to have been a grade level ahead and then score advanced.
Correct. So formally accelerated in either subject area or grade level.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening. I will walk you through one of the more challenging, I think, components to understand, because it's a little different than passing a test and at what level you pass a test. This is the progress component measures the academic performance of students based on their past performance and tells us how much growth we're getting. And there's 2 different measures. You see this strange scatter plot in the middle there. What this shows us, there's 2 different things. It's based on 2 different factors, a growth index and an effect size. The best way, I think, to explain this measure is this. If you had a bunch of students running in a cross-country race, there's a whole mob of students. We have them running, if they continue to run at the same pace, which we would call between a -2 and a 2, okay, on the growth measure, they continue to run at the same pace, from one year to the next, they make growth, okay? But they make expected growth. Now, along with the expected growth, if they start to go ahead of the group, if I break away from the pack and I run faster, I'm exceeding the expected growth. I'm going past what's expected, okay? And if I drop behind, if my change within the pack falls behind, then I'm not making the same amount of growth. So I fell short of what the growth expectations are. Now, to compound it a little bit is the idea of the effect size. What the effect size means is it looks at what's the practical, is there a practical significance of a change present? So if the pack is all running much faster, or the pack is really, really scattered in our race, if a student looks like they're making more growth, they take into consideration, well, there's a lot of variance in the field. Or think of it as if everyone were running downhill and all of a sudden we all made a lot of growth, we might not say, hey, that has the same practical significance because there was something different this year about the test and how the cohort performed. Does that make sense? Okay, so effect size plays into that. Looking at this, overall, our composite growth index was a 13.35, which is phenomenal, and our effect size was a 0.1. Now, the growth index being above the +2, significantly above, really, okay, and the effect size being 0.1 puts us in the 5-star rating. So it's the combination of the two measures. Any questions about that? For expected growth is -2 to 2. They expect kids, it gives a little bit of wiggle room. It's kind of like if you and I tend to run the same pace. If you won one year and I won, the next year, and it's kind of just give or take, it gives a little bit of room within there for the growth measure, the kind of the expected, we expect around there. A 0 means you're kind of exactly where we thought you would be.
So if you're unexpected, are you a 3?
What's that?
If you receive expected growth, is it a 3-star rating?
That lands you in the 3. And then the effect size determines whether if it's over, whether it's a 4 or a 5, and if it's under, whether it's a 1 or a 2. So those two things, that's the strange scatter plot if you look. The x-axis, is the value added, where you are as far as growth, and then the effect size moves you up and down within that.
So I want to know where the threshold is for 4 stars and 5 stars.
Okay, 4 stars and 5 stars, it's a matter of the effect size. So if you take a look at the chart, for 4 stars, if you have an effect size of less than 0.1, then it's 4. And if it's at least 0.1 or higher, plus 0.1 or higher, then you end up in the 5.
Reading glasses would help.
I know, it's kind of small, right?
Thank you.
Looking at our growth overall, in a comparison with the other districts that are comparable, I'm sorry, this is overall, not even comparable, this is districts in Ohio. We are the 30th ranked district in the state with growth on a composite scale, which puts us in the top 5% in the state this year. The high school, with a growth index of 31.39 and an effect size of 0.4, puts us in the 0.099% for the state and the top, like number 3 out of 3,025 buildings. So quite a phenomenal accomplishment and something definitely worth celebrating. Now, outside of the composite growth, we get this chart. This shows us progress by state test. And you're going to notice it's not as specific as some of the other graphs that you're going to see in our presentation. The reason being the specifics of this particular data set, when we talk about value added and growth, are not released until the 23rd of this month, okay? State law requires that the report cards come out earlier, so they do what they can and give us kind of a general range of where we are and where the numbers fall, but we get a much more specific look later this month that will give us it will yield a lot more information about where we can goal set and what we might want to do next and where we would plan. So it's not as specific. This shows growth across grades and subjects, and you can see that it's not all blue. We have different places, which shows us areas for opportunity for growth, and that's something we'll address later on in this presentation. Again, the EVOS data is what that's called. The value-added data will be released later that month, and that will give us more insight as to what our next steps might be.
And this is a 3-year average. Again,
yeah,
for the
thank you.
first time, we have 3 years of data. It weighs heaviest this past year is 50% of the weight, and then the year prior and the year prior to that are 25 and 25. So this gives you a little trend history as well, as Nicole talked about.
Any questions?
All right, keep thinking, we're going to move on. Next, we have our gap closing. So this one is looking at not just all kids, but then let's look at subgroups of kids. So are we making growth with not just, specific students, but all of our subgroups where we have 15 or higher kids, 15 or more kids? It also looks at our English language learners, and are they making growth? Finally, it looks at chronic absenteeism. We want to decrease that, and we want to look at our gifted services and our gifted students. So in this, we had 5 stars as well. You can see the percentages there. 50 out of 69 lands us in 72.5%, and anything greater than 60% based on that chart earns 5 stars. Give you a little more detail here on the next few slides. There are 6 measures that go into this, and I listed them already, but as a quick review, the gifted performance, chronic absenteeism, English language, proficiency improvement indicator. We have graduation goals by subgroups, and then we have by student subgroups, English language arts and math achievement, and English language arts and math growth. So the state recognizes 10 subgroups. In Strongsville, we have 9 of those 10 subgroups that we have 15 or more students in to count. So we have all of the subgroups that are listed there with the exception of American Indian or Alaskan Native. So this is the impressive of the two, the achievement. And again, we're thinking about that performance index. So how are our students performing with that weighted scale? Are they scoring proficient or higher, meaning they'll get a 1.2 weight or a 1.4 weight? So looking at performance index, every year the state sets a target, which are those red dots that you'll see. Those targets differ for every subgroup, they differ for every year, and they also differ between English language arts and math. So on the left-hand side with English language arts, you can see that we surpassed that target in every single one of the 9 subgroups. And the same thing on the right with the math. Now, an area that we need to look at and continue to explore and address is the growth. So this is the same set of subgroups, but this is growth. Are we closing gaps with our subgroups? So you can see on the left-hand side, this one, the target stays the same at 1.9. That's the red bar there. Or I'm sorry, that's not the target, but the red bar is the target there. You can see that we had only one of the subgroups that met that target. And then on the right-hand side, math looks a little bit better, but still only 3 of the 9 meeting the growth index there. So we will circle back to this and talk about, what are we doing and how are we looking to continue to grow all subgroups and all students. Looking at graduation, they also break this down by subgroups. We're doing well there with all of our subgroups surpassing the graduation rate. And also our English learners. The red bar again is the target. We are surpassing the target as a district, which is something that I think Nicole and I hold dear to our hearts and celebrate because we have a lot of students who are English learners, and we have invested a lot of energy in these students and these programs, and the students are really performing, and the teachers are doing great things. Next is the gifted. So the gifted has 3 areas. We have a value-added rating for gifted, looking at, did we meet value-added? Did we meet the performance index? And then did we meet the gifted identification and services? So this is specific to any student in our district who has been identified gifted. So with value-added, our students in their respective test areas, meaning if they're identified in math, then they look at their math test. If they're identified superior cognitive, then they'll look at all of their tests and so forth. Met that, we met the performance index, so there's a threshold that they set as the bar. Our students exceeded that. The one area we did not meet is the gifted identification and services. So Lauren, our gifted coordinator, did a little more digging, finding out that there were 6 districts in the state of Ohio that actually met this third one. It is a lofty goal. What it addresses is, are we identifying students, and especially are we identifying them early? So there's a higher weight if they're K through 2 and we identify. But then also, who are we serving? So there's certain criteria to be counted as served in gifted, and that's the area where we did not meet. So the calculations are shown at the bottom there. We are at 49.3%, and the goal is 80%. So again, we have some ideas that could bolster this, keeping in mind, though, it is a very high goal. And, our districts, surrounding districts are also struggling to meet this and to surpass that goal. I'm going to move on to graduation rate here.
Before we run away,
Yeah.
so to say it's 49.3%, what are they measuring and how are they measuring it?
So it's how many, there's a host of criteria. So how many students are we identifying? At what grade level are we identifying them? What is our balance of subgroups? Do we have an equal balance? Are we identifying more of one subgroup than another? And then a lot of it has to do with service. So do we have gifted either intervention specialists serving these students, or do we have our teachers who have received high-quality professional development and we can count them as served? Lauren has done a lot of work building this, but it takes a lot of work. So every year, it's, I believe, 15 hours of ongoing PD. And in order for us to count, for example, 6th grade ELA students, if they're identified, they're in 6th grade, unless every single English language arts teacher in 6th grade receives that high-quality professional development, we cannot count any of our 6th graders as served in ELA.
Is it an unreasonable rubric?
I would say it's a lofty goal. It has gone up the last 3 years. So this is, I believe, the height of where it's going, 80%. Again, 6 districts in the state, or I think it's 0.5% of districts actually met this goal. I think that stat lends you to believe it's a little bit unrealistic. Is it, something that we can certainly work toward? Yes.
Okay.
Do the teachers have to then be like, are you saying like, or they have to have like certain certification?
Right.
So if a child's gifted and they're in a class and they're with a teacher, even though they're maybe doing extra things, it doesn't count?
Exactly. Or if only, we can count, so for example, in elementary, we have our gifted math, and that's the kind of the pull-out service. So all of those students in grades 3, 4, and 5 math identified, we can count as served. We can count some of our AP classes at the high school as served because they have special training that goes beyond just the AP training. Again, unless they have that high-quality professional development and it's across the board, so all 6th grade math teachers, all 8th grade
right.
ELA teachers, we can't count any of those students, right? So Lauren has on board right now the 6th and 8th grade ELA teachers, which is outstanding. Quite a few other teachers in the district have signed up as well.
Is there a way to put these kids in those classes with those teachers and then count them in, or is it
It has to be
really hard?
holistic, so, meaning, every teacher in that grade level, in that subject, has to be have the
okay.
HQPD.
Okay.
How does it work if you have a superior cog kid, but that doesn't have reading or math designations? In order to serve them in middle school, what would you have to do?
We would have to have the teacher have the high-quality PD, so in ELA, in math, whatever, as long as the teacher had that, I'll call it credentialing, for lack of a better word, then we could count the student as served, because they're,
So that would be individualistic versus this other version? So they all sixth grade math, but that would count for a superior cog kid?
yes. Because superior cog, theoretically is gifted in every area.
Okay.
So just in terms of context, so when the state report card and the metrics are finalized, it's not completely done by educators. Educators have a voice in it, but so do legislators and so do lobbyist groups. Whether it's for early literacy or EL or gifted. So this component of what Aaron's talking about, and I'm not making any qualifications on it, but this aspect of the rubric, which is highly complex, is something that the gifted lobbyist group put forward. And it is extremely difficult. So whether it's fair or not fair, I think it's a good valid measure to kind of see where you're at and how you're serving kids. But as you take a look at, as we've seen, a handful of school districts, 1% in the state have met that aspect of the rubric. It's more of, I look at it more as a litmus test to where you're at with it. If I had my way, I would say, put it as a report-only data point that doesn't factor in, or if you want to have it, but realistic to say that school districts are going to be able to achieve all components of the report card is difficult, and that kind of gives context as to why it's in there.
Erin, at some point, can you send me the names of the districts that?
Sure. Okay, the graduation component is a measure of the four-year adjusted cohort graduation rate and the five-year adjusted cohort graduation rate. This is always a year in arrears, so we're looking at the graduation rate for the classes of 2022 and 2023 as of the summer of 2023. So we're a year behind. If you look, we earned a 4-star rating on this. There's no 4.5, with a 96.2%. And we needed a 96.5% to earn a 5. I did some calculating, that is 2 students. So, so we were very, very close in this component. The most recent year, the 2023 counts as 60%, and the 2022 counts as 40%. Oh, by the way, those 2 students would need to be from the class of 2023 with my calculation. But we were very, very close on that measure. We've gradually increased over we're trending up in general on this, our graduation rate year after year. So it's kind of where we are. If you take a look at the next slide, it tells you the breakdown. This 3.6% of students that didn't graduate, it tells you where or why they weren't counted towards the graduation component. The non-graduates, it's about 36 students. I didn't count them, but I calculated off the percentage, so ballpark. And of that group, the majority of them are students that stopped coming to high school or stopped attending high school. Any questions? Okay, moving on
Are
to
they
college. Oh, go ahead.
Are they going to change the measure percentages? Do those get updated every year?
Oh, I don't believe so. I think it's off of
So it'll still be
100%.
95. It'll still be the 90.
Yeah, I don't think they ever move it to 100 for us. It's going to be, it should be in the same range.
So we already can do the math for next year?
No, not off a 5-year.
Well, at least we can figure out the 4-year.
Figure out the 4-year-ish, yeah.
Early literacy's up.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I forgot you on the note.
All right, so early literacy, this is
an area where we also received 4 stars. Digging into this, I think we have some real celebrations here, and I'll go through those. So there are 3 areas that we look at. They're unrated measures, but then they come together to give us that overall rating. So I do want to spend a minute talking about what those 3 measures are, because they're very different, but then they all combine for that overall 82.8%. So the first one is proficiency in 3rd grade reading. This has to do with, there's a reading subscore on our 3rd grade English language arts test. That subscore is a 50. Students had to have earned a 50 on that subscore in order to count in this measure. So even though that wasn't the passing score, they needed a 49, I believe, to pass. They needed a 50 in this measurement in order to be considered proficient. The second one is called promotion to 4th grade. This one's pretty self-explanatory, but this is, did we move students to 4th grade? It doesn't matter if they technically were promoted or a parent chose to promote them, or they met it through an alternate pathway. It's just if they went to 4th grade with our support as a district, and we had 99.2% of the students that did that. I neglected to say 83.4% had that 50 score in proficiency in 3rd grade reading. And the area where we scored a little bit lower is improving K-3 literacy. This is a relatively complex measure, but it's a 2-year measure. So they look at when students come in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, if they're not on track by the end of September, we put them on a reading improvement and monitoring plan, or a RIMP. Then it doesn't matter what they do the rest of the year, it matters, but in the eyes of EMIS and coding, if they were on a RIMP, they are considered to be on a RIMP that entire year. So then they look at this same group of students as they progress to the next grade level and take those fall tests. Did they come off of the RIMP, or did they go from off, not on target, to on target? So this area is 58.7%, and that combines to give us to an 82.8%. So initially, this was a little disheartening because we've worked so hard in this area. However, again, when I started looking at this a little more closely, I think there were some real things that I am proud of. These 3 graphs I'll walk you through. So the one on the top left, this was our overall score, 82.8%. And in order to get the 5-star, I believe we needed an 88. Let me go back just to make sure. Yeah, so if we had an 88 to 100%, we would have the 5-star. So we were at 82.8%, but if you look at the way the graph has trended, we've made great growth from 21 to 22 until last year, 23, 24. So each year we've grown by 2 percentage points, over 2 percentage points in the last year. And I would attribute this to a lot of the science of reading professional development that we've done, the letters PD that we've done, and of course the great work of the teachers and staff and students, as well as our MTSS process that we've talked about, providing interventions to students. So we are moving and trending in the right direction. The middle graph there, the one on the right top, that is our students who are on track, and it shows each year. So you can see that the so-called spike, I mean, this one's even more pronounced, from 67.4% on track in 22-23 to looking at 23-24 when we put them, when we did the calculations of are they on track or not, we were at 85% that were on track. So that's a huge gain. Lastly, at the bottom here, it's just another way to show the same information as the top, but you can see it in a little different format there. The red bars are on track. The blue bars then are the not on track. So you can kind of follow the red over the years and see how that has grown, and also conversely see how the blue, or the not on track, has shrunk. So we are making strides. We are moving in the right direction. As we know, nothing is quick, but as we're moving kids through the science of reading and learning and teaching our our staff, I think we're making some gains here.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is this report card too new to have data from 1819?
The format of the, I believe, is that correct?
Was
We
it
didn't track
1819
this
the
in,
first year of this version?
I think the system changed.
No,
I
this,
feel like they've changed it.
yeah, it was a different, they didn't include, they still had the on-track to off-track back then, but they didn't have the other two measures.
So we would have on-track percentages.
We would still have that,
Can I
correct.
see those sometime?
You guys can keep going, I can look at it while you're.
Yeah, okay. Might be in the secure data center. I can't find it. Our last component is one that is report only this year. The earliest it will be rated will be the 24-25 school year. Okay, but that's the earliest, and I don't believe we have it finalized yet. It is the college career workforce and military readiness component, which is unique in that it's not related to test scores. Okay, it's more about how we're preparing kids for life in post-high school. This measurement, like I said, the goal of it is to measure the preparedness. And if you look, there are 11 different readiness measures, that the state has established. Of those, a student can count once towards those measures. So if a student meets one of those measurements, they count as towards the percentage of people that met readiness. Okay, and if you look, there's quite a few there that kind of, they seemingly, like the ACT, SAT remediation-free scores and honors diploma, we have quite a few students who meet both of those requirements. Okay, so they would count once in that count when this becomes rated. If you take a look at where we are right now, we have 59.2% of our students meeting one of these readiness measurements as of actually the year before last. Again, this is like graduation, it's a year behind. And students can count only once. If you take a look, here is the graph of what students received. If you add the percentages together, it will probably be too many percent. It'll be over 100, right? Because we have kids that are meeting more than one. You'll notice there's a couple areas here. Apprenticeship, pre-apprenticeship, and apprenticeship completion are not measures that are readily reached. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Apprenticeships are officially offered by different organizations, like unions and groups that oversee different trades. And oftentimes, kids are not eligible to join an apprenticeship until they're at least 18 years of age. So, and that's something that is more likely to happen in a career tech setting. We do have some career tech scores, career tech students included in this. You'll see them most often in the 12 credentials and or state license percentage, and in the technical assessment proficiency percentage, because that's where those two measurements end up. Any questions about this?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is there a special unspoken goal about military enlistment? I can't believe that we had 0.
There's a certain criteria that students have to give us certain paperwork in order for them to count, for us to code them in EMIS. And that's something I'll be looking into, to say, well, we know we have students that enter the military, how do we have none of them on this? It's a matter of collecting the right paperwork, so I'll be working on that.
Okay,
to make
great.
sure we get that paperwork from students.
Thank you.
If a student is getting one of these through Polaris, do we both get credit?
Yes.
Does that person not count against us? I just want to.
They get reported in both places. They get
Okay.
reported as Polaris and they get
So if
reported for
someone
us.
does the Ohio Means Job Readiness Seal at Polaris, but they're also enrolled in Strongsville.
Right.
We both get credit for it.
Yes.
Okay. And then do we know, has the state indicated where the measurement's going to be when they actually start to rate it?
I'm sorry.
No,
So-
they're still, not to just jump in, so that
Yeah.
in law, it states that it may be rated. So the first thing they actually have to decide, and the department was doing a variety of, they had to do a study and provide that to the legislature here coming up, so I think actually this month. So they will decide whether they're going to rate it, And then once they rate it, once they decide that, if they say they want to rate it, then they will charge the department to figure out how to measure it. So there's nothing specific yet.
All right, so we want to move on to what we've alluded to along the way, some things that we want to highlight as our accomplishments, and then also areas that we want to continue to put our focus. Through elementary, two things to highlight: the on track for K-3 students in reading, and then also the achievement in our subgroups, so the language arts and the math. There were other things that I could have selected, but I thought these were two really nice highlights to showcase work that's being done. Contributing factors, we have the science of reading, professional development. We've spent a lot of time, a lot of the ESSER fund money, to have Steve Owens do the training, to have all of our K-3 teachers to go through it. So I think that is a contributing factor. Also, we've invested money in staffing for our English learners. So we have a focus with our English learners, and again, we hired like a new staff member for this year. In the past, we've continued to add staffing as we've seen the need. So that has been effective. We have students with disabilities. We have a lot of supports built in. As Bill mentioned earlier, we're seeing growth. We're not there yet, but they're achieving. So we want to continue to close that gap. But we have outfitted our teachers with support and staffing as well for that. We also have the literacy specialists, which you're familiar with. Those are with the the two buildings that don't have Title I. We have the teacher that serves in a very similar role as a literacy specialist and works with some of our most academically needy students in reading. So kind of a high-level overview of some areas in which, again, very proud, we're doing good things, and some contributing factors as to some of the ways. And there are a host of reasons why these things are highlights for us. Looking into areas of ongoing support. The progress and the value added. So as we talked about, it's a 3-year average. We saw some red in those charts. So that's an area, we can't just say, oh, that was a one-off year, because now it's a 3-year average. So that's something to look at, especially in 4th grade, looking at the math and the ELA. The good news is these things were not surprises for us. We've had them on our radar, and we've been working toward continuing to build either programmatic changes, staffing changes, and preparing our students. So as you know, we've spent a decent amount of money to adopt the CKLA program in ELA, in English Language Arts, for K-5. This year is our pilot year, so we have about 20 teachers doing the pilot. 2 of the buildings have their 4th grade teachers doing the pilot. So that's just, one area in which to address the 4th grade. But the results we're seeing, and I've been in many of the classrooms, it's an outstanding program. We're seeing student growth. The teachers are really happy with progress. It's a lot of work, but I have not come across any that said, this isn't a great program or there's things lacking. I have so much hope for this program, and, early indicators, it's exactly what we needed.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Which 2 buildings have 4th grade piloting it?
We have Whitney and Muraski.
Thank you.
You're welcome. With math, we know that's an area. We did have the new Envisions program. I believe this is year 3. However, it has been brought to our attention, we need some more professional development. Year 1, we did PD. We brought in the company and we taught them, here's the new program. But then we spent a lot of time focusing on English Language Arts. So this year we made a concerted effort we need to go back to math as well. So we brought in the company in August and did a half-day session with all of our K-5 teachers. In November, we're going to repeat that. And it's more of a methodology, meaning we have to move away from an old school model where, teacher in the front, kids doing work. That's not how the program's built. And so we have to really make sure that we are using all parts of the program. We're embedding centers and group work and metacognitive strategies. And, we're not just doing old math with a new program. Another really, I'll call it progressive thing, the principals came up with is each building, they now have committees or team members. So every staff member in their building belongs to one of 5 teams. Each building has an ELA team, a math team, and then there's a host of a couple other options. The math teams have this on their radar. And what's nice is this was on their radar before the report card came out. It was kind of we need to make sure that, we need some more training in math, but then we also want to enrich our students. The kids that are getting it, they're getting it with, with or without me sometimes. So how can I enrich those students? How can we grow students so they're not just passing a test, but they're actually making that growth? Lauren, as our gifted coordinator, has put a concerted effort this year on helping with math. So she's going to be in not just gifted, but in a multitude of classrooms to continue to build that pedagogy where teachers are actively engaged with the students and students are having those deeper learning experiences. Not to get too into the weeds, but we implemented last year performance tasks in math. So these were part of the program, but that was one of the things that a lot of our teachers were skipping because it wasn't just rote type problem solving. This takes time and it's challenging and it sometimes brings some frustration to our kids. But we said we want to see students doing one every topic. And this, again, lends itself to the Model Mustang and building those competencies. We're not there yet, but teachers, we started last year, they said by the end of the year, students were better at them. So it's not rote. It's a novel task, it's a real-world experience, but they have to apply what they're seeing and learning from the chapter into this new problem set. So we are mandating that those are taking place every topic in every grade level. And those just give us kind of like that pulse check of where are we with things that aren't just regular, everyday type math problems. Can they apply new learning to novel situations? As I talked about, Lauren doing some work with the math. In addition to that, we added a program called Success Maker for our 4th and 5th grade students this year. So this actually came from a middle school suggestion. We had it in 6th and 7th grade in years past. And they said, it's great for our middle school students, but it's intended to close gaps. So could we start to close those gaps before they get to middle school? And I said, that sounds like an outstanding idea. So we did 4th and 5th grade this year. If it's proving and showing benefits and closing gaps, then we'll start to build it backwards, do a 3rd grade, potentially 2nd grade.
Erin, are all students using Success Maker or only certain students?
4th and 5th grade students.
But all?
Correct. Now, it's some challenge when they have multiple programs. It is something that we've talked, especially with our gifted intervention specialists, is it something that's needed for our high-achieving students because it's intended to close gaps? We believe the answer is yes, because it's adaptive. And so not only does it remediate, but it can also enrich. So we're very early on with this program. We're going to have another PD in November, kind of helping teachers through this. What does this look like? What are the reports? How do I use them? How do I tailor instruction and customize it for students? You're welcome. Lastly, formative assessments. You've heard that a lot in the last year or so. Again, a very targeted focus on these at the elementary level. How are our kids, we're getting that pulse check. So not waiting until the end of a unit, the end of a chapter. How are students doing in the middle of it? On a, at any point during your teaching. You take that check and then you change your teaching. So if students are getting it, you may move on, you may move faster. If they're not getting it, how do you remediate, change what you're doing? So this is something that we started, as you know, 2 years ago now, I think, in English Language Arts. We've made them a little bit different in that we're doing them more readily and using the data to change instruction. So this is, again, something that principals and I are working with our buildings to help instill in teachers. So we don't want to just give a test and then say that was, okay, it is what it is. How do we use that data in a timely fashion through their TBTs or teacher-based teams? Talk about strengths, talk about, how did you teach it? How can I better teach it? And use that to help the students. Lastly, just talking about our teacher-based teams, we've started some vertical TBTs, especially in our upper grade levels. So we have maybe one science teacher in 4th grade and one in 5th grade at a building. They've started meeting and collaborating. So, okay, what is it that you do in 5th grade? How can we make sure that we're on the same page? What labs are you doing? Let's talk about pacing, those type of things, so they have somebody in their subject area and not just their 5th grade team. We're also doing that with our CKLA, with our English Language Arts. So in the grade levels that have multiple people across buildings, we don't want them to feel isolated or on an island if they're maybe the only 4th grade teacher in a building. So we've allotted and made possible for them to have the vertical TBTs across the district, and also some of those vertically. So they have support, they're checking in with each other, and then also with me. Lastly, collaborative professional development planning. So I think Jenny and I have talked about this already once, but we want to make sure the principals are involved in the professional development. It's not just what we think teachers need, but how do we get the buy-in from the staff, because principals know what's going on. They have a really good pulse of the building. So we have them, we're working collaboratively, planning the PD together, so that is indeed effective. Move to secondary and then answer questions that you may have.
As far as secondary accomplishments, there's many things to celebrate, but I've selected a few. At the high school, this is their 3rd year, as Mr. Ringler mentioned, the 3rd year of outstanding progress, achievement, and growth, with an increase of a performance index, which is achievement each year, 3rd in the state for the growth, and the 3rd year that all subgroups have met growth, with students with disabilities scoring within 5 to 7% of their peers. So these are outstanding things. These don't happen out of nowhere, as you know, and if you'll indulge me, allow me to give credit where credit is due to not only our students and their supportive families, but to a lot of our hardworking colleagues who are making these things happen. Our district learning team has done a phenomenal job of opening teachers' eyes to different ways of providing instruction, different ways of looking at instruction. Credit, of course, goes to Mrs. Pelko, Jessica Frenchek, and all the participants in that group, who are doing very innovative things. Focus on formative assessments has been a huge part of what's moved the high school forward. And that's under Bill, of course. It's his wheelhouse. Our instructional coaches, the admin team, and they've done extensive professional development that have led to that. The switch to mathematic, which is a move away from a teacher-centered focus in math instruction, a traditional math instruction, to a decentered classroom where students experience first and formalized later. That was brought to us largely by the work of Kim Scott and her support. They're in their 3rd year of mathematic. It's in its 2nd year with our algebra students and geometry students at the middle school, and I'll talk more about how that will impact what we're looking at for middle school as well. It's kind of trickling down to them. And the co-teaching has had a phenomenal impact on what learning looks like for our students with disabilities in the general ed classroom. That's led by Eric Castle, Drew Kazmikis, and all of the teachers there. They have specific professional development and professional learning communities that focus on making sure they're meeting the needs of all the students in the room. So they're doing a great job. At the middle school, I'd like to highlight their achievement and their subgroup performance and achievement. All subgroups have met achievement in both math and English. And I'd also like to highlight the accomplishments of our English language learners. They're doing a phenomenal job. These are due to a focus on TBTs and the use of benchmarks and checkpoints, which are assessments afforded to us free by the state for practicing the skills required of kids on state testing. Carol McKnight and Kim Scott, along with our instructional coaches, have worked with our teams to work on our achievement and making sure that we're meeting those goals. And in addition, we added late last year, about halfway through last year, a second English language teacher. Our numbers at the middle school had gotten to a point where it was very difficult to have it case managed by only one teacher. So adding a second teacher in that position has really helped. And we changed our programming and our modeling with how we're reaching our English language learners during the day at the middle school, where our English language teachers provide co-teaching in the general ed classrooms, and we strategically schedule students on specific teams so that they can get that support within the classroom. So I attribute what we're seeing as highlights to all of those efforts. As far as ongoing support, with the high school, while it is not rated, the college career workforce and military readiness component is something that has already been a focus of ours with the strategic plan and with a lot of what we're doing. I'm sure you already know through other meetings, we are very dedicated to making sure that our students are successful once they leave us. And there are a lot of teams already working on that, and we'll continue to work on that, whatever the rating future is of this component. It's an important part of what we provide for students and their families. Again, we're expanding these things. It speaks to the Model Mustang components of building skills within content areas. We are embedding Naviance. Our counselors are embedding Naviance, which is a program that we use for career counseling and college applications and all of those things. They're embedding it more into classes. We have our Business Advisory Council with Cameron and Dan work on that, along with the high school administrative team and other business community members to support that. We have a career exploration program with Susan Harb and Matt Jankar as the teacher of that program that helps get kids time to investigate careers and find kind of their footing and what they want to do next. And on the horizons, we have a new experiential learning experience through Kelly Riblet that will help students explore careers in their early grades, in 9th and 10th grade, and move on, eventually culminating in a senior project component. And we were fortunate enough to add an additional counselor, which will give us a chance to work with graduation plans, students more one-on-one with graduation plans and success pathways. So those are all exciting things we're doing that match this component, but regardless of the component, aren't they great things to do for kids? It's what we want for our students. And the middle school, our focus will be on progress and value added. The progress in subgroups and value-added growth is where we want to dedicate some of our energies. We have a lot of things. The good thing about these measurements is it helps us identify opportunities for growth, but it's good to be in a position where we know these opportunities are things that we've already expected and seen and we've planned for. And we have things in the works we're already doing, and we're expanding and extending to meet these goals as we go forward. So some of the things that we're doing, we have training and supportive instructional coaches. We've shifted from TBT coaches and tech coaches this year to instructional coaches. They're receiving specific training. The high school, middle school, and elementary instructional coaches will all be involved in that. But our middle school coaches are going to have more access to teams and help with coaching than they maybe have in the past because of scheduling issues. So that's something we're looking forward to. And that is under Jenny's guidance, obviously Jessica Frenchek and our coaches, Ann, Carol, and Kim, who are working to, our district coaches who are working to get those coaches ready and better able to help and support their peers. Science of reading training is ongoing, which will help impact what literacy instruction looks like in our classrooms. And we recently sent a cohort of teachers from the middle school to get Just Words training, which is the Tier 2 version of Wilson Reading, so that they have better understanding of phonics for when it's needed by their students. In addition, we have PD with a focus on Tier 1 instruction. HQPD, provided by Lauren, that's the component that teaches teachers how to better meet the needs of our identified or gifted students, and she's working with them and working with TBTs. We have the implementation of new materials. We have purchased a lot of new materials this year. 3 of our 4 core content areas at the middle school are working on implementing new materials that we purchased for them last year. We have Into Literature, which is our new ELA program. Amplified Desmos Math is worth noting because it fits very closely to the mathematic model that we're using at the high school. So that'll give kids an opportunity to experience that at the middle school level, and so they'll advance even more quickly, we think, through things and into high school. We have National Geographic for social studies with a focus on Tier 1 and literacy within the content area in particular that team is working on. We have administrative attention and supportive TBTs. John, Tara, Chris, and Brian have kind of restructured their approach to helping and supporting our teacher-based teams to meet their goals. And they're very early in the process, obviously, this year, but it's going in a good direction. In addition, we've added intervention specialists at the middle school and added the assignment and specialization of our special ed coordinators to help with students and their needs in the classroom. And Lindsay, Lindsay Arndt, our MTSS coordinator at the elementary level, is now working with the middle school to meet the needs for both PBIS and for instruction. So we have lots of things going on.
Sounds great.
And a lot, right? There's a lot, right?
And what's great, I think Nicole touched on it, but we aren't overhauling all of our systems and our processes. We've known where some of our areas of challenge, our weakness, where we need to beef up, and we've started to address those. It's going to take some time. You know, a new textbook adoption, they say 3 to 5 years until you really understand it, you live it, you're seeing great gains. You know, we'll see gains prior to that. But I think this is just a testament to everything that you as the board and our administrators and obviously our teaching staff and our support staff, what they're doing already and how we can continue to grow these areas. You know, we absolutely recognize we're not perfect. We have some areas that we absolutely need to address, and that's what we're working toward. Just to reiterate, you know, there was nothing completely surprising in the report card data, which I think is a good thing. However, absolutely, we'll still keep working. So questions that we can answer for you about anything that was presented tonight, or additional questions that maybe you have?
I'll start by just saying thank you. I always look forward to this meeting. I like to get involved in the numbers, et cetera, but what is important to me is that it reminds us that by far we have wonderful parents sending us wonderful kids with wonderful teachers and administrators, and we get really good results. So it's important to say thank you, and thank you to everyone for their hard work. I have 2 kind of questions. One, we all have lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff on our plates. Is there anything we shouldn't be doing? Whether it's we do it because somebody thinks we have to, but it doesn't have any effect, and we should say we're going to stop doing that. Or are there things we should stop doing because you can only do so much, and you need to prioritize? And so, you know, one person looks at everything and says, it's all important, we have to do all of it, but sometimes you need to make a decision and say, I'm not doing this now, so that I expand the capacity to concentrate on wherever our priorities are.
I can give some initial thoughts and then follow it up by anyone that would like to add to it. I think we've done a really, I'll say great, for lack of a better word, but a really great job at looking at this. So we've been very reflective and responsive to feedback that we've received. I'll give you a quick example is the English language arts curriculum in grade K through 5. For years, it's been, we have to make our own materials. We have to come up with, find things, and we don't have a systematic curriculum. That was kind of the impetus behind getting CKLA and a lot of other factors. But I think as I shared, one of the teachers that is piloting it, an outstanding teacher, said, Erin, this is the first year in which I'm truly happy. Like, my passion is back. I'm not sad or crying on the way to work, thinking of all the things that I have to prepare, or the copies to make, or what I have to pull. And that's what we want. What I love is that every classroom across the district in that grade level is going to be receiving the same curriculum. So it's not, who's your teacher, what curriculum will you be receiving? Back to your original question, I know Cameron spent some time meeting with the building principals and the coordinators and having the conversation of, for them personally, as well as things going on in the building, are there things on your plate that we can help remove? Are there things that you want to do but you don't have time? Those type of conversations. He's done an outstanding job of addressing those and when possible, reevaluating, is this a necessary thing? We've made some changes because of that. I know elementary speaking with our common assessments, that was another thing that we looked at. We got feedback from teachers who said, initially, what we're doing, while we understand the importance, it's taking a lot of time, and we're not seeing the bang for the buck. So we revisited that last year, made a few tweaks, and then this year the principals in the summer came to us and said, here's our thought, can we look at doing different formatives? That way, it's a quick pulse check, the teachers aren't spending a ton of time grading, and then the data's too old to use. So I think we're very open to feedback. I can't think of anything personally that, I can identify and point to and say this is not something we need to do. Should we have those conversations and something comes up, I think all of us in the room are very ready and willing. If we agree there isn't a need, there isn't something that, in the bigger picture, then we can talk about that.
I just want to echo, I concur with what you said. I think that the team has been responsive, and I've touched base in a variety of ways, and the feeling is our teaching staff is less overwhelmed, feeling more head above water than they have in a lot of years. And us as a district have kind of said, we want this year to be, we've got a clear strategic plan, we want this year to be getting good at the stuff we have in place rather than adding something new. But I will give Dave a shout out. Talk about adding something new that has taken things off the plate is his work with Magic School AI. So that's been a new tool that we've added, but I would say holistically, our teachers would say, this has really reduced a lot that's on our plate because of the resources and tools and PD that we've had. So it also can work in the opposite way of add something new that helps us be more efficient and effective in things that we can use it for. So I would say the credit is when you taught them something new and they keep on saying, can we get some more of that, some more training, that's been a benefit.
And I would just add that I think we need to continue to stop telling them what to do and how to do it, but allowing them, facilitating professional development, facilitating meetings, facilitating staff meeting, whatever it might be, where we get people in the room to collaborate and model what we want them to do in the classroom. We have lots of examples of that where we've modeled a strategy and the next day teachers are using it because it works and they like it and it resonates with them. I think the more that they can discover how to use something, whether it's CKLA, the math program, along with, and our coaches have been, I know Nicole mentioned it, but they have been instrumental because they're also teachers, working with teachers, and they pick out the nuances and the issues, and they can help problem solve, it really quickly for them. And so I think it's just phenomenal to see the agency of our teachers right now, and Cameron alluded to, it's them taking hold of it, they're finding meaning in what they're doing, and they're going to continue to do it without us telling them what to do. And as you saw tonight with the student there, that student clearly has agency as well. I know that's one example, but that's really the goal, to kind of impact our teachers in a way that they will continue to do things and then again, make sure our kids have agency to go and do whatever it is that they want to in their future. So I think that's probably the most exciting for me.
Can I add a different angle of the same kind of question I was already thinking about? In terms of like, are we doing things that maybe we do too many or not enough or whatever? From the student angle, one of the things I noticed, and I know we do, and I heard today about the success maker, is that we do this thing where we say, every kid's gonna do X. Every kid's gonna do success maker. Every kid's gonna do Lexia. Every kid is gonna do, you name it.
Sure.
Is that too much? I guess that's because as a parent, I've experienced it, and sometimes I'm scratching my head about, like, is this too much for my kid? And that's one angle that maybe we could look at and say, are we best utilizing the technologies, not just for the teachers, but for the
Yeah.
students?
Thank you.
For sure.
Anything, Nicole, you wanted to add?
To go on with what Cameron said, I think, and what Aaron did, the adding of materials, it sounds strange that adding materials takes away work, but thoughtfully placing good materials in places has really cut down on teacher workload when it comes to planning and prepping for classes. I think of what we're doing with English in particular at the middle school, having a strong comprehensive book to use with good assessments already written. Teachers are spending time getting the material to connect with, they're getting their kids and the material to connect versus creating all the materials and worrying that it's hard enough and we have questions that are written the right way. So thoughtfully adding things, I think, has really made a difference, like you said, with CKLA and with even the Magic School. I think that's, it seems like it's an addition, but it's helped cut back on like they say, 7.5 hours a week teachers tend to spend finding materials, which is way too many hours when we could help them with that piece of it.
So you don't have to answer now, but this is my Moxie question, and it's a two-part question. So I'll use the reading as an example, right? So 15% is awesome. But continuous improvement is the name of the game. So I don't want to say, I want to ask what lines do we want to draw in the sand to hold ourselves accountable and say, what is our target for next year? I could tell you 7%, but that might not be fair. So that's why I want you to think about it. And then the second part of the question is if there's anything that the board needs to put in place to make it happen. Because it's one thing to just say, here's your target, hit it. It's another thing to say, here's your target, what support do you need? What do we have to do? We've already made a big investment with science and reading, et cetera, and I think it's bearing results. But again, 15%, 10, whether it's 10% or whatever, that means there's that many more students that are ready to read. And I don't think there's a whole lot of argument. That's one of the most fundamental things we can do. But to think that we went from, what was it 3 years ago? 38% or whatever, to 15%, that's awesome. That's awesome not just because it's a great percentage, it's awesome because there's kids who are learning how to read. And it is such a fundamental skill for anything. So laud, honor, praise to everyone responsible. It's the one, that one, the blue numbers.
Don't move.
It's the blue numbers. Was it, I need
21.
reading glasses. What was it?
2021,
Yeah.
the blue, where it says 31.3, I believe, in the
Yes.
second
Yes.
bar graph there.
I'm
versus
saying we
where
went
are.
from, we had that many children who needed additional support.
Right.
And now we're at 15%.
Right.
And so my Moxie question is it reasonable that in a year we'll cut it to 10%? Is it reasonable? If it's unreasonable, we need to know that, right? But we should be able to improve on that number. We certainly don't want that number to regress. And it's a challenge. I want to know what the number is so that we then measure it. But the other side of the coin for me is are there things we need to do to support it? Similar to the investment we made in science or reading. We said, this is what we want, and we're willing to pay for it. That's enough for me.
Rich, I think I would say if this is what we want as a community, then this is why we need issue 53. Because this is a part of, this is my 10th time sitting through a report card discussion, and the progress we made from 10 years ago to now, the exponential growth we've made in the last 5 years, and the sustained growth that we've now seen, that we're achieving at such a high level. The high school success happens because all of the great people there, but it's relying upon a foundation of kids coming up through the system to do that. And since 2019, when we've been able to invest over $4 million more into our school district, in academics, in staff supports, in great programs and resources, in opportunities for students to extend their learning. And that doesn't even get into the arts and the theater and the music and the sports and all of those things that make a well-rounded education. It's not by happenstance that we've got here and we've been able to sustain it. It's because of the great support of our community that has been able to do that. And I'm hopeful that we'll continue to have that great support, because these are the results we get for all of our kids. And as our purpose says, we're inspiring and empowering today's learners to be tomorrow's leaders. We all talk about what we want for our community and our kids, and that is for them to stay, to come back and be the leaders we need them to be. And these are the things we need to continue to do to make sure they do that. And sadly, the idea that we can do more with less or we'll be fine without it is not an accurate statement. Because what's going to happen, those supports and resources that provide that systemic improvement will start to go away. And we will see through a variety of measures that our results will start to regress back to past levels. So the board has given a tremendous amount of support. To be honest with you, we have a master staffing plan. We've got all of this stuff. I don't know what I would tell you right now about what else we need. We just need to take what we've got, continue to have it, and to get really good at it, to get that 15% to a 10%. And to make that value-added score in the plus to minus 2 range for all of our buildings. And I believe we can do that by the great people we have around this table in the district. But continuing to look at what is our funding source going to be moving forward is a distraction to our mission, and it will be a degradation to what the academics and experiences our kids will have moving forward. So I appreciate your ask, but it's a collective ask to the community moving forward.
And it wasn't a softball question, but it was a really good answer. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. So thank you to both of you for the
you.
work you've
Thank
done
you,
on this and the
Scott.
leadership you've provided. We appreciate it.
I want to say one more thing. I think the best thing you said tonight for me was that across the board, it's very, like, all the schools are learning the same thing.
Yeah.
Because I think we weren't always there.
Right.
And that made me feel good. Like, that was a good thing. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. As we transition from that, I'll bring up Mr. Breckner, who has one item on the agenda for the board's consideration.
We could have really let him.
One item in this section is for additional transportation, having a company help us out with that. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the operations manager be authorized to enter into an agreement with Tender Loving Care Transportation Company Incorporated for the 24-25 school year for the transportation of special education and handicapped students within the Strongsville City School District to in-district schools and also classes at schools out of the district. Transportation to in-district schools will also be provided for students becoming homeless while attending Strongsville City Schools and now residing outside the district. This agreement is put in place due to the impracticality of transporting these students by Strongsville City Schools Bus Transportation Department.
Any questions for Steve?
Thank you, Steve.
And that ends my report.
Next on our agenda is adoption of consent calendar. Action by the Board of Education and adoption of the consent calendar at this point of the agenda means all items appearing in the agenda denoted as type action consent are adopted by one single motion unless requested otherwise. Do I have any otherwise? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Cobain. Any discussion? Hearing none, please take the roll.
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes,
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
And Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
and the motion carries. Next, we have Board of Education Other. Do I have any Board of Education Others? We do have a football game tomorrow. It is not on Friday, it is on Thursday. It is going to be a great game, we're going to win again, and I hope everyone comes out to watch it.
I will also say freshman games before that than the varsity game.
4:30.
So it's a doubleheader.
And I'm assuming you pay once to get into the stadium.
That, I don't have the details,
Is it
but I will be there for the freshman game.
Is it freshman, JV, and varsity, or are you saying?
Just
it-
freshmen,
Oh, it's just freshman and
Yeah.
then
varsity.
Freshmen
I
are at
think
4:30,
JV
right?
yeah,
4:30 and then
4:30.
the varsity's at 7.
I think JV is on Saturday.
Okay.
And it also is senior night for cross-country, maybe football, maybe something else. I have to program the scoreboard tonight, so I'll let you know tomorrow. Any others? We do have need for executive session on the topics of,
To prepare for negotiations and bargaining sessions with public employees concerning compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment, and to consider the employment of a public employee.
do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Cobain. Any discussion? Hearing none, please take the roll.
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes?
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
The motion carries. We will enter into executive session at 8:55 PM. We have no expectation of further business. Thank you very much and have a nice evening.